subscribers and friends alike. It's Grant coming at you from the city park in Rapid City, South Dakota. It's August 9th, 2018. It's a Thursday. If the phone audio can pick it up, wherever those birds or bugs or whatever making that noise is, if people are wearing earphones, I apologize ahead of time. That's nature. That's part of living the van life out here, hanging out. In the park, I was cleaning the van earlier today. Found a whole bunch of trash in my drawers that I'm gonna take out from previous owners. Wiping down the doors and stuff earlier today. I'm sorry for my voice too. It's a little harsh because I developed a cold. Well, being out here, it's one of the downsides, I guess you would say, of being out here in the nature more often. But this morning, for instance, I was sitting here laying down on that mat behind me, taking in the breeze and the cool air, and it probably like 8 o'clock in the morning or something. Some dude parked over there, and his dog came out and immediately rushed up into my van to say hi and give me kisses and the whole thing. And it was an interesting moment because the light bulb went off in my head that, not that I should be out here just for that or anything, but had I been in an apartment, that kind of situation would never happen. Interactions with people I don't even know and their dog and stuff like that, it just would never happen because I'd be in my apartment. I know my routine. I'd be up and on my recliner watching my TV, living indoors, when I could be out here in nature, and living the van life forces you to be out here in nature because I had to go find some place that's got shade to park, which is out here at the park. That's, if you heard that, that was the local club for boys across the street. They have the intercom and the boys are out there playing different games in the back of buildings, and they're talking over the intercom to tell them messages and stuff. If you hear that on the phone, I'm not sure what all audio comes across on the phone or not. But the reason why I'm making a video of this today is mainly last night I was stealth camping across the street over there at the Holiday Inn, and I had some neat comments about my van from bikers pulling up behind there saying, "Oh man, it looks like the rapist van," and yada yada. And the other biker was like, "Yeah, I should secure my stuff underneath my seat that locks, lock everything up, because you never know, that looks pretty shady." And that whole thing is really annoying to me because that's a media push right there. The media displaying the DC shooter who was shooting people, sniper, from a van or something, from a white van, work van, going around shooting people because he was messed up in the head or whatever. Because it's negative news and it sells, it puts a negative spotlight on van life in total, but the media doesn't care because they can make it sell. So the few times that the general public, and by that I mean the people who live in their houses, ever come in contact with or hear about any kind of thing to do with van life, they immediately think of things like the DC sniper and how people are just messed up in the head if they must want to live in their van or whatever. And immediately if they come across some person, I've been offered 2 or 3 times in my life, or somebody knocked on the door and offered me money and whatever, they immediately think that because you're living in your van, you're forced to be that way. And while there are people out there, don't get me wrong, that are forced to live in their car and that's all they can do, I came from a job that had room and board and everything, and I purposely quit that job on purpose to relocate back to South Dakota, to Rapid City, to live the van life on by choice. I could have kept working there, could have kept living there, but I chose not to because I'm doing something that I love to do versus living with people and whatnot. But the general society wants you to pay for a big old house that you hardly ever live in, because the bigger and more expensive looking house you got, the more time it takes you to take care of it, mostly financially, which means getting out there and working all day long, coming home, barely sleeping in it, and hanging out in it a couple hours of the day if you're lucky, maybe being there on the weekend if you're not going to get out in the park and do something with your life because you're so exhausted from work. You don't have really a real life. You have a work slave kind of life. But that's what this society wants you to do. They want you to go to your eyeballs deep in debt and credit cards and mortgages and the house loans and auto loans, personal loans and all this, student loans and all that stuff. They want you to get eyeballs deep in debt so that you will have a reason to work your ass off your whole life. Not to say that I'm trying to be lazy or anything, But right now, without being working, I got all the time to myself. Once I start working, and then say the second check into working, the fact that I don't have rent and utilities, I could take that person out that came and knocked on my door and asked for money. I mean, asked me if I needed money or whatever, because I don't have to pay that rent and utilities and whatever that they do. You know, at the end of the day, that extra $500 or extra $1,000, depending where you live in the country, that's all mine, goes into my pocket because I choose to live in a van. But that's not the only reason I'm choosing to live in a van. One of the other reasons is to get out of your nature, like I was saying earlier, and have things like that little thing with the dog come running up into my van this morning. Woke me up, I was taking a nap. I was fine with it, you know. And then the owner came up and we chit-chatted for a little bit and tossed the ball to the dog and stuff like that. And things like that, just as a minor example, would never happen to me if I was sitting there living in my apartment or my house. I would cut myself off from the world. And really, van life makes you be more, especially if you're an introvert, van life makes you be way more personable with people out there, if that's the word to go, you know. Way more talkative, because you gotta find out where this and that is, and you're continually on the move, which just keeps you on your toes. Because you can hang out someplace for a few hours, but then the sun alone, like it's doing now, it's moving the shade away from me, so you're forced to move again. And it sounds bad in a way, because I'm trying to take advantage of what little creature comforts I got out here for that nature provides for free, versus having a house where I could sit in a house in 70 degrees year round, you know, set the thermostat to whatever, and voila. And I could have an RV that does the same thing if I really, really wanted to. But the point is, behind this van, I keep everything nice and simple, nomad, and what's the word? I can't think of the word at the moment, but keep everything nice and simple and neat. And really the most that I would add to it, like I was saying, was insulation and a recliner and a better bed, in terms of the house part of the van. Maybe someday an extra battery and stuff, because I do have wiring left over from the fire department on both sides that is hot and ground wires ready to go right to the battery system. So that's the one good thing about the van. But you add those 3 or 4 simple little things and I would be happy. Maybe a heater or an air conditioner someday down the line, when you have that extra money from working full time to spend on stuff that you want to spend it on, instead of constantly paying somebody else's rent for their property, or if you own your property, saving that money for taxes or paying utilities on that property. Because whenever you own a house and everything, you still have to pay the water and the sewer and the electric and all of those things that are services that come to you, unless you set it up off-grid where you have a solar system on it and you have your own well for the water, and you have, you know, a sewer, not a sewer tank, but a sewer distribution field, or whatever they call it, where it filters it out into the nature, into the hill or whatever underneath, and underwater table, whatever, takes it back and all that stuff, so you never have to refill the tank. It's the only way to get away around most of the utilities. But the point of this video is last night, and I also have had 5 or 6 offers from different subscribers to send me money to help me out, and etc. And it's not like I'm prideful or anything about it. I just choose, from my point of view, I chose to put myself here in the van life in Rapid City, currently looking for jobs. I just left my job in Yellowstone on purpose, at my own freedom of free will. I could have stayed there a couple more weeks. I could have, you know, lived right there in the parking lot and worked. I know I could have done those things, but I'd much rather be here because I like it here better. You know, there's faster speed Wi-Fi. I've got friends here. Sturgis Motorcycle Rally was coming up, which is actually going on right now in the middle of the week. At the end of this week, we'll have a bunch of takedown stuff, like we set up a bunch of tents for Sturgis when it started, and we're going to have to go take those tents down when it's over. So I have spot jobs coming up anyway while I wait, but in the meantime, I've applied to all the, you know, the bigger box stores, see if I can get on somewhere full-time. I'm not too worried about it, because the best part about living in a van life on wheels, if for some reason, if I go around and get 25, 30 different applications out, nobody ever calls me back or whatever, this thing's got wheels, you know, all I gotta do is go get me some gas down the road to some places, hiring. Not that I'm, but then my point is, once you start that full-time job, within about the second paycheck worth that everybody else would be putting that paycheck toward rent and a deposit and utilities and yada yada, all of that money's mine. You know, and in the meantime, it's not like I didn't come here with a plan. So I have my basic necessities of food and gas and the car insurance and all that stuff paid up ahead of time on purpose, so that I have that month, probably 2-month gap, give or take, if you really push it out there, to where I can get by without. Because that's the other beauty of living in a van life. Food and gas is your only continuous repeating bills, besides, well, your phone bill and car insurance. But my car insurance is paid up, and my phone is, I'm working on the phone still, but I don't really as much need it at the moment. It's still good for another month. But my point is, your only continuous bills that you, if you set it up like I did, is food and gas, and I've got those covered. But I appreciate my subscribers trying to offer me money now, but I would really rather do things myself, so to speak, not to be ungrateful or anything. Now, if YouTube itself offered me money as a creator for the channel, you know, under monetizing videos in exchange for my time, taking the time to make, produce, and edit these videos, and then bring them up on the, you know, upload them to YouTube, in exchange for that they would give me money, then that's a different story. That money I could turn around and make better videos on YouTube with, or as the option of it. But that would be just money that would just be there whether or not, you know. Not to say that I don't want to take money that somebody's offering versus YouTube offering, but there's a difference between that and getting on here. When I get on here to make videos, I don't get on here to ask people for money, to e-beg or whatever they want to call it. Sorry for all the audio problems this morning, the birds, the Club for Boys, my voice being weird, the train in the background. You gotta go with the flow when you're out here in nature living the van life. I just wanted to put those thoughts out there. I mean, stealth-wise, they had kids behind me on skateboards messing around at the Civic Center, between the Civic Center and the hotel where I was parked at the other night. 3 cops showed up to deal with them. All 3 walked around my van, told them to move on. They moved on, and all 3 of the cops left. None of the cops had any idea that I was even living in the van, and the only way they found out later on was when I moved from there down across the parking lot to the Civic Center to sleep overnight after watching the internet. After I no longer needed the Wi-Fi, I moved across the lot away from the hotel to give the hotel that parking space back. And of course the cops saw me, and then they came up here and read the plate. I heard some muffled noises. I couldn't make out what they were saying, other than that one last cop said, "And that's all we can do." Didn't knock on my door or nothing, so aside from that, I would have had perfect stealth if I had not chose to move myself. Not that you have to hide from people. It's just, it's easier when you're in the city to the city stealth-wise to just have enough stealth so that you get good sleep, but you're not doing anything illegal by sleeping in your car. It's just, if somebody else notices you in here, it comes back to that same old thing of, oh my god, that person must need help, they're in their van, living in that van. Oh my god, who would want to live like that? Because society teaches people to live in that house and live in that dead life. So basically you end up having to hide from that type of people in order to get a good night's sleep, just so you have an uninterrupted night's sleep. This video's getting pretty long. The train's kind of killing it, so this was an update for today. Like and subscribe, leave comments, and we'll catch you in the flip. The other thing is, I had a couple other questions from subscribers. The main one being, where do you park at night? I'm new in my van, blah blah blah. I don't want to get in trouble by the cops. Where do I park? The main thing is, you have to look at your vehicle first. If you buy something like this, it's a cargo van where nobody can see you, and then take the time to put a curtain up like I have, you should achieve a maximum level of stealth to where you can park about anywhere. That would be the main advice that I would give you. Secondary to that, if you have a SUV or a car or whatever you happen to be living in, and you can make the windows blacked out without making it obvious that something's covering up the windows. That would be your second best choice, and would again allow you to park about anywhere. Now, as to the actual parking itself, there's two choices. You have public parking and private parking. The main option would be public parking, because you can park on any public street for up to 72 hours in most jurisdictions without the vehicle being towed because it was abandoned or whatever. Some cities have ordinances where you supposedly can't sleep in your car because it's against the law or against the ordinance, so to speak. And I've heard of people in California having to pay up to like $500 fines in some places for parking on these popular roads that are next to beaches and stuff, where lines and lines of RVs and vans have done that and parked there and made an eyesore of themselves, so that the local community who lives in their houses say that we don't like this, put up signs to avoid that. And that's what happens, is now we as van dwellers have to deal with these ordinances. And this guy was coming from California, and that's why he asked, and I truthfully told him, I've been in California a couple, 2 or 3 times, but I never really taken my van or car or whatever and purposely lived in California, because I knew that California is one of those bigger states, and it's a coastal state and everything, that is against free living in your car, which is weird because the state is actually liberal, and liberal thinkers are naturally more free thinkers than conservatives. But when it comes to that, I guess van dwellers are too liberal for even the liberals. But anyway, not getting into politics. Excuse me if I spot flies and stuff. I was cleaning this morning, and apparently that the front dash cleaner stuff, I can't think of the name of it. Apparently the flies really love that smell. Instead of 2 flies, I have like 8 flies in here now, so excuse me on swatting my flies away. But anyway, getting back to parking, this comes back to that 72-hour rule. If you park on a public street anywhere, you got 72 hours usually. Now, if you go park in a neighborhood in front of somebody's house, obviously, depending on that person, how comfortable they are with you parking their car there. If it's a newer looking car, you might get away with it. Older looking cargo van, work van like mine, I might get away with it just because it looks like a work van. But overall, I kind of say don't even bother parking in the neighborhoods, because it ain't worth it. To me anyway. The dogs usually always start barking because they can tell that somebody's in the van, whether the owners can tell or not. And then the owners don't put their dog in until like 10 o'clock at night. It ain't worth it to hear the dog barking all night long and making the owner have to fight his dog and everything. And for the most part, that's why I avoid neighborhoods altogether. But the one exception to that would be apartments. If you go to an apartment complex, especially one that is pretty active with transient parking, different people coming and going and visiting people's friends and everything like that. I wouldn't want to say a party complex, but if you park on a public street that's aside from an apartment, those are a good spot, because everybody comes and goes and nobody cares who you are staying in your van, unless again they can see you. That's why it's another reason to have stealth, so that they don't see you, because nothing is illegal about it, like I said earlier. But in order to get a good night's uninterrupted sleep, you don't want to have somebody see you sleeping in the van or the car or whatever, because a lot of time, even if you have an eyesore of a car, people don't care about the car so much as you sleeping in it. But anyway, you have choices of public or private parking. Now, private parking would be a business parking lot, like say a 24/7 store, like Walmart, obviously, or other places that aren't 24/7, but they close up, but they allow campers to go there, like the Bellas or Camping World and blah blah blah. There's places like that. Or you can get away with parking at Lowe's or Menards and stuff like that if you have a work van. Most of the time they'll let a work van, contractor van, stay there in the parking lot. They don't care. Sometimes they'll let RVs stay there in the parking lot, sometimes not, after close. And that's the other thing, is you can get to, if you can go to a store an hour after they closed and all the vehicles are gone from the parking lot, you can park there all night long, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, when they're going to open the store up. The sun's already come up and it's already daylight, and people don't care if you're napping in their parking lot in the daytime, because every other people are there around in the parking lot, so they don't care, because they don't have to know whether you're up to no good or not or whatever. But if you're sitting there at night, that's why they start to care. They don't know if you're up to no good being parked in Lowe's parking lot or whatever. They think maybe you might rob the store after everybody leaves or whatever. All these negative things come up. But you can park in private parking like that, or what I do a lot is park in the hotels. because the hotels usually tend to have decent free Wi-Fi half the time. Some of them are locked up. The Wi-Fi networks are secured. Some of them aren't. Most of the time they got decent restrooms if it's a nicer chain hotel that are open 24/7. All the doors of the building may not be open 24/7 at night. They might not be open, but the front door is usually open. You have to walk by the front desk and go to the restroom and walk back out and whatever for the security of their guests. So all the doors may not be open, but the business itself is open. And it's a 24/7 business, so you just park in the parking lot. You have to deal with a little bit of the comings and goings of people shutting their car doors and turning their engines on, turning them off, especially around bike week. You have to listen to the bikes revving it up and everything. But even in those hotels you can find the quieter spots. You just have to kind of look around and keep in mind ease of access. Everybody and their dog that wants to go work and live there at the hotel for that night wants ease of access, so they're going to park right in the front door. Front door. You know, everybody's going to do that by human nature. We want to be lazy, so to speak, and so we're not going to park clear across the parking lot from the door. So if you want a nice quiet sleep, your best option is to park clear across the parking lot from the door. For that reason, because no one's going to come up and bother you. Now, the one downside with that is, like I had last night, I moved from the hotel to clear across the parking lot. Like I said, the cop saw me, and then in the cop's mind, they'll think it was around 2 o'clock when the bar closed, so they'll think I was coming from the bar that's in the hotel, and I was trying to drive drunk, and then I saw the cop, so I parked it. That's what a cop's going to think from a cop's point of view, because they're always trying to look for the negative and the bad and to catch criminals and blah, blah, blah. So that's what happened with last night. But most of the time, if you park clear across the parking lot from the hotel, nobody's going to care. The business isn't going to care or nothing. Occasionally, you will, however, get a suspicious or a curious cop come up there that didn't even get a call about you or nothing. That just thinks, well, that looks odd, that van's over there parked, you know. Less so in a van, but more so in a car. If a car is parked all the way over there in the corner of a parking lot from the business, like say that pickup over there, they're going to take one look at that pickup and be like, that's suspicious. Maybe somebody's over there, you know, smoking it up, doing illegal drugs, or having sex in the car, or they were driving and they pulled in there and decided they couldn't drive home or whatever and passed out. You know, they're going to go look for that because that's their job, to look for that. Now, just because they come and knock on your door or whatever, I didn't have a knock on my door last night, but I was prepared for it. Just because they knock on your door does not mean that you necessarily have to answer it. And this is what people who have not been in the van life yet, that's the second thing that they're scared of, is the law enforcement encounters with law enforcement on the way by. If you get that fabulous knocking on the door. Just because a phone rings doesn't mean you have to answer it. The same thing happens with knocking on the door at night. You don't have to answer it. Now, there's an exception to this rule. If they read your plates and you're wanted for something, you've murdered somebody or whatever, didn't pay a speeding ticket, and so your license is suspended, and I don't know, it went worse and worse and worse from there, to where all of a sudden you had a felony or something, to where you had a warrant. And then they knocked on your door, most likely they'll announce that you have a warrant and they want to see your hands up and blah, blah, blah. At that point, then you'd want to go out there and, you know, do as they say and walk out with their hands out, because it's better off to do that. But majority of the time, what happens with law enforcement is you have 3 categories of encounters with law enforcement. You either have, you're arrested, or you can't leave, you're a prisoner, essentially, and they take you off to jail. You're detained while they figure out if you were involved in some kind of crime, in which you again can't leave until they figure that out, but you're not quite, you know, going to jail yet or not. And then you have a consensual encounter, and what happens at night when a curious officer comes up to you, most of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, that's a consensual encounter, meaning you can consent to have that encounter with law enforcement or not. Now, if you choose not to, and they knock on the door, they're going to knock on the door pretty loud and announce themselves and blah, blah, blah. But the majority of the time, they're just going to leave after that because they've read the plate. The plate came back that the driver's not of the vehicle is not wanted. That's as far as they can go legally, because you're not willing to make contact with them. But there's that offhand chance that the driver on that plate that they read on your vehicle has a warrant for something. So if you know you're not wanted for nothing, you haven't done anything remotely illegal in years or whatever, then you should have no problems whatsoever parking, whether it's on a public street or a private parking lot. Because either way, if you do happen to catch the eye of the general public, and then of course the eye of the law enforcement, nothing you're doing is illegal unless you're in a city that has an ordinance against it. And your best defense for a city that has an ordinance against sleeping in your car is to have good stealth, for one thing, and then just not answer the door, because you don't have to. There's nothing in this world that says you have to answer that door. That's the best advice that I can give anybody living in California. Well, anywhere in general. Majority of the time, the only time they have the ordinances is when there's beautiful places like beaches on a coastal state. So majority of the time it's the east or the west coast, anywhere that's got borderline water for the oceans. That's where you're going to have the ordinances, because people like to go out there and camp. You might encounter an ordinance here or there in a very busy tourist attraction kind of town, or a very high-priced kind of town like Lake Havasu. I don't remember if they have an ordinance there or not, but I wouldn't be too surprised depending on if the local RV parks want everybody that's in a vehicle to come stay at their RV park. They might have got a city ordinance passed, which states that you can't sleep in your car on a public street unless you're in a RV park, so that they can get their business. You might encounter that on occasion. But the majority of what I want to say to new people that haven't gone into van life yet and are scared to go do it and whatever, if you go to cities that are more than 60,000 people, there's all sorts of resources in town, like food banks, soup kitchens, and places that you can go and eat, places that can help you out with gas and whatever if you had to go that route. Places that can help you out with medical if something comes up, and all of a sudden that you didn't expect when you go out there. There's places that, emergency care clinics and stuff like that can help you out with the medical portion of it that are less expensive than the hospital. All these things do exist, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is if you plan on like a 2-month or a 3-month little field trip or whatever, and you save X amount of money to get you through it and blah blah blah, and you get halfway through it, and then your van breaks down unexpectedly, and you had to put it was kind of expected or whatever, but you had to put all your money into that repair. Then you're sitting out here in the middle of nowhere, and this is what the majority of people wanting to go doing van life and travel the country and everything, this is one of their main fears, is getting out there in the middle of nowhere, being 1,200 miles away from their closest family or relative or whatever, and not having any way to prevent something like that from happening. Well, the story of life goes is things will happen in life whether you want them to or not. You should be driving down the road and somebody else got into a wreck and T-boned you, and you made it out fine, thank God, but your van is totaled now, or your RV's totaled, and so you're screwed. You're miles and miles from home. You have no way to get wherever. That is a choice that you made to put yourself in that situation, but at the same time, you're not totally screwed, is what I'm saying. The system is set up to where businesses have people that they have to terminate, and then other employees decide to leave their employment. So they're, one way or another, people have these periods of unemployment in their life. Most people do. I mean, some people work 20 years, 40 years, the same job, never have a problem, but there are other people out there who do have this issue, and the system knows that, so they have programs in place to help people, including people who are just passing through. There's even places that will give you a bus ticket back to where you came from, as long as you can prove that you have relatives there and stuff that could take you in and help you out on that end to get you out of their state so that you don't become their problem. They will give you a bus ticket to go home, essentially. So there's places that will help you out along the way. So don't fear the unknown, getting out there in the middle of nowhere. Now, getting out there in the middle of the desert and then having something happen to you, the best I could say in that option is to have AAA or have full coverage insurance on your vehicle, and that way you can just call for roadside assistance and they can come out there and hopefully find you out in the middle of nowhere and help you out. But that's the second thing that you should have, is AAA or else full coverage insurance with the whole roadside assistance package on it while you're living this van life. Because if you think about it, especially if you've already sold your house at home and everything else, and you've made the whole big move to actually live full time in your van, it's worth that incentive to have that AAA or that full coverage insurance, so that if something happens, you don't lose your house and your wheels and your storage place, pretty much everything, all in one shot. But if you cover that ahead of time, That's really all you need to worry about. Do that ahead of time. Save ahead of time. Try to budget out ahead of time before you quit your job. And then go out and have that adventure of a lifetime if you want to go traveling cross country. Other people live in a van life like me just to save bills and live locally right there in that same city. They do it year after year after year, and they just circle the city and live in different stealth spots to camp in at night for pretty much the sole purpose of saving bills, or saving on not having to pay bills. But that's the other thing you can do about this van life. You don't always have to take and buy a van and go traveling with it. The other night, I forget what the other question was. I will advise you that probably for the first week that you do it, it takes some getting used to, hearing all the noises that you don't hear out of your house. The people driving by, the people walking by your van, the dogs. And probably the creepiest thing, if I remember, because I've done this for like 3 years now, but if I can remember, I think the creepiest thing is hearing somebody walk by and maybe not even talk, just, you know, and you hear them walk by your van. That's kind of creepy by itself. Hearing somebody walk by talking on the phone isn't nearly as creepy as somebody just walking by. And then I have had in a situation in Miles City, Montana, where most likely a tweaker or drug addict of some kind was going along checking all the doors. He wasn't breaking into cars, but he was basically checking for an open door so he could go in there and steal whatever you had, so he could go to his, be my guess, his drug fix. Sell off whatever you had that he stole, and then go get his drugs. And I scared that guy when he tried to open my door, and it was locked, of course, but I opened it up. It was like, sup? Scared the hell out of him. But mainly I wanted to see who that was, because I knew it wasn't a cop. You might have creepy incidences like that. I've had, when I was working expediting, I had people shooting basically toward the van at night, but it wasn't on purpose. They robbed the gas station across the street from the truck stop. And the police got there faster than they expected, and the police and them had a shootout, and their bullets came, of course, across the street to the truck stop and bounced off the other work vans around from me. I'll tell you, that was one of the scariest nights of my life, and I'm not saying that to scare people out of doing this, because that's the only one time in 3 years, you know, that I've had, you know, a major issue. You break down every now and then, your vehicle breaks down. The older the vehicle you have, the more likely that it will break down. You just have to keep that in mind. Obviously, if you could afford to do so, if you could pay for a whole brand new or pretty new vehicle up front, so that you don't have a lease and don't have that extra bill of a lease, $500, $400 a month, or whatever it is. If you could do that, but then still have a new enough vehicle that you have a warranty on it, like new, brand new, right off the bat, or less than 5 years old, or whatever that you have a warranty on, that would be their best option, because then you can just go to the dealership and get whatever fixed when something happens. But I say that on purpose, that you don't really want to go around the country and then be paying for a lease of $500 a month to your vehicle to still live on, unless you have a fixed income or have that budgeted out, that no matter what, this money goes to pay this lease, whether I'm starving or whatever it is, you know, so that you can keep your vehicle. Partially I say that because I let my Chevy Traverse lease go to the wayside because I couldn't keep up the payments from not having employment, but I chose to do so I could go all the way around the country, and I knew one day would come that the repo man would show up and repo it. But at that point I didn't want the vehicle anymore anyway, and I was actually returning it to Montana when they caught me in New Mexico when that happened, when they took it. But I was already prepared. I had a sleeping bag and everything. I was ready to go hitchhiking, whatever I wanted to do at the time, you know, so I was already prepared for that situation. But that's the other thing I want you to put out there. No matter what your current situation is, I want you to prepare ahead of time. Because as long as you take the time and properly prepare, this is the plan, this is what's going to happen if everything goes good and great. This is what's going to happen if things don't go so good. This is what's going to happen if it's, you know, everything hits the fan. What are you going to do if they tow your vehicle away, whatever, you know. Because you have to think about that stuff ahead of time before you go out there and do it. Now, if you're just going to live in a local city and be a local city van dweller, you don't have as big of an issue with that. You can go buy it, especially if you've saved up the money. You can go buy another $500 van or $1,000 van if something happened to the current one, and something to sleep in for a little while. Or you can go rent a U-Haul van from U-Haul for $20 a day until you can get your van back or whatever. You know, there's other things that you can do that's cheaper than having to rent a hotel or having to live in a hostel. But there is things that you can do. This video is getting pretty long. I was just killing some time before lunch here, and then I'm gonna go out, buy me some lunch, and then I'm gonna go off to the library and upload it. Hopefully I answered all your viewers' questions recently. Thank you for the new subscribers who have gotten me up to 707 the last time I looked. 707 subscribers. I fully appreciate those who have tried to send me money. It's not that I don't appreciate it, it's just that I want to do this on my own so that I can see each level as it goes. You know, I paid my fine off, got my driver's license back, I paid for the van, I paid for insurance for the van, and now here I am, you know, this next step, and next step, and next step, and next step. Basically get a full-time job and work all the mechanics of the van out, and then work on insulating it, and then work on the actual living in the camper van part. And you know, do that step by step by step. That way I have a goal. I go to work and I have a goal. I'm going to get to this point, and I'm going to get to that point, and I'm going to get to this point. And that's the whole reason behind my wanting to do everything myself and not accept any kind of money. It's not that I'm prideful or want to be offensive to anybody. That's where I'm at. That's my situation. But anyway, like and subscribe, leave comments. We'll catch you in the flip. Peace.